And on that mobile phone, I carry a digital currency like the dollar, maybe the euro, maybe a local, maybe the yen or the won, maybe if there's an effective nation state. If there's not an effective nation state, I just clearly swap out to the dollar immediately. Everybody would want to do that. And then I also carry a digital property, Bitcoin. I want to hold it for 100 years. It's instead of holding a building, which you can tax or seize or rain on, or instead of like holding a bar of gold, which you can take from me, I'm just going to hold my digital bar of gold on my phone. Mm-hmm. And then maybe I have some other assets. Maybe I have digital art. Maybe I have digital securities. Maybe copies of ownership of something else that I might like sitting in a wallet. But certainly, this I can give to everybody on Earth, and I can move the money at the speed of light. And what do I trust? I'm trusting a piece of software, which is a lot cheaper and a lot more reliable than trusting a building, a bank, a board of directors. When you actually have your money in this bank vault, I mean, look at it. Imagine money in the... Think about that. When you had your money there, you were trusting the guy that ran the bank, the manager of the bank, the mayor, the head of the police force of the bank, the head of security of the bank, the dude that came to actually fix the lock, everyone that touched the thing, the governor of the state. Then you were trusting the head of the country, the central bank that managed the country, the military system.
Who do you trust with Bitcoin?
Nobody. That's the point. Nobody. Bitcoin's a bank in cyberspace run by software, incorruptible software. And this is the beauty, right? Really great engineering, it takes a corruptible element and puts corruptible or imperfect elements together in a system such that they cancel out their imperfections to create perfection. Where did this happen? Happens in a thermostat. In a thermostat, I have a strata or a metal, and the metal contracts when it gets cold and expands when it gets hot. Okay, now I tell you, build something which doesn't contract and expand when it gets cold and it gets hot. You're an engineer. How do you do it? You take the piece of metal that's going to contract and you put it in opposition to another piece of metal that contracts the other way. But if they're both the same and they both contract with the same force, and you pin them, they cancel each other out, and then you actually get a zero tolerance perfect machine. That's how John Harrison created a perfected clock. He basically used that insight that imperfect elements can create a perfect mechanism in a clock. That clock was used to calculate longitude on the ocean. That's how we actually navigated for 300 years. It's all based upon a bunch of imperfect elements that create a perfect mechanism. Bitcoin is the same thing. I've got a piece of software, it runs on a machine. Is it perfect? No. Why? Because you can corrupt it. How do I fix it? I give another piece of software to him. Now the two of each of your machines check each other. Well, what if you're both corrupted? Well, I throw another 10,000 of those pieces of software into the ether. Well, who do I give them to? People I don't know. How do I corrupt them? How do I even find them? Okay? What if I promise to murder everybody in the US that doesn't change their Bitcoin nodes? Doesn't help. Doesn't help. What if I murder everybody I can find with a Bitcoin node? Doesn't help. I can't, right? How do you stop a fire? How do you stop a fire in cyberspace? Right? It's like you've released this thing.
You've operated, you've invested, you've seen things. You saw Amazon drop, I don't know, what was it, 95% in '05, whatever the year was when the stock went down 95%. I may be wrong on the year. You've seen a lot, okay? You've seen a lot of what's happened. Yeah, so you seem 100% certain about what you're talking about, which history doesn't favor 100% certainty. You know, it typically, you know, and it's not even I'm not even talking about the trust but verify. There's got to be an element of skepticism, but you're like, no, it's almost a combination of a person who has experience running a business, investor, genius, but also a salesperson. You're very, very good at persuading as well. Are you 100% certain about the future of Bitcoin and that it has zero risk. There's no risk that
No,
could do anything to
I don't
it?
think you can state that. No, I think that everything in life has risk. So there's a black swan risk, an unknown unknown, and anybody intellectually honest has to admit that there is that risk. That's not what I would say. What I would say is you've got a bucket of money. Let's come back to Africa. Okay. You've got $100,000 in Africa. You've got to invest it in something. You've got to put it into a building, into land, into an African currency, into something else. What are you going to do? There is 100% certainty that you're going to lose 80% of your money in most currencies over the next decade. There's 100% certainty you're going to lose 95% of your wealth over 30 years in just about every currency. And so you have to work through each of these issues and say, what's the cost of doing nothing? What's the cost of not taking a risk? What's the risk-free rate? Well, the risk-free rate is the monetary inflation rate. So the price that you pay to not do something is the rate at which the money is collapsing. If you were a Russian, they just lost 35% of their wealth by not doing anything in the matter of weeks. So in this particular case, you just have to look at the array of options. If you're an investor in South America or Asia or Africa, I would say the risk-free rate is much higher for you, right? Like you're in Lebanon, what are you going to do in Lebanon? How about Afghanistan? How about Iraq, right? What are you going to do? In all those situations, they're thinking, maybe I'll trust my money to Tether. You know, Tether's run by Bitfinex. It's just a company. So why is it that people in many countries are more willing to trust a company out of Hong Kong that's running a stable coin on the crypto network than they're willing to trust their local bank? Well, because in fact, Tether is probably a better bet than betting your money on most currencies in the world. Other than the top 12 currencies, the rest are collapsing.
Why do Tether if you can just do the US dollar or USDC?
Well, you can't. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
Why do Tether if you could just do the US dollar? Okay, how many people in Africa can walk into a Bank of America in New York City, open an account, and then get the US dollar? None of them. That's the whole point. Right? And okay, I did it. I'll give you an example. I put $1 million into Bank of America in Argentina when the dollar was worth 1 peso because I didn't trust the peso. I did it. What do you think happened? The government basically shut down for 1 day. They sent an edict to the bank saying all dollars must be converted back into pesos. Then they went off the dollar peg and they devalued the peso 10 to 1. And I lost 90% of my money. Okay. So why do Tether instead of trust Bank of America in Argentina? You tell me.
Mm-hmm.